Welcome back in, lads. This is episode 3 of my 6-part mini-series on how to become a better man. And today we're going to be talking about text and date mastery. Lead or be led. Choice is yours. The theme of today's video is going to be around communication as a mirror of masculine energy. And we're going to be talking about overthinking texts, losing polarity, and being reactive instead of directive. And in particular, the content we'll be focusing on today is going to be 1, the difference between validation seeking and frame holding. 2, how texting exposes your subconscious neediness. And 3, why leadership is felt, not said, and how to create emotional momentum. And it starts right now. So we live in a digital age. We live in an age of hyper-communication and also terrible communication simultaneously. The invention of the smartphone removed responsibility from your communication. If you think about it, before we had phones all the way back, you were responsible for what you said, for the most part, in person. And that in of itself, there's a consequence to your words, what you say and how you say them. And that was how men, women, everybody communicated. And it sort of, by its nature, created a certain expectation. And as civilization developed, societies were built around all of that. Then, obviously, with the advent of letters, phones, and then texting, back in the day, texting, and then all the way through to what we have today, which is, again, like everything else in the modern age, it's now overdone. The Overton window is gone to an extreme where now, instead of using technology to communicate, to help your communication, it is essentially the only form of communication that you do. And from that, it exposes so much about humanity and humans themselves and where you're at as a man, ultimately. So when it comes to texting, because that's the way we all do it now, you've got to be dialed. You've got to be able to evoke the feelings that is required of you as a man towards a female when you're trying to, create attraction. You're not going to succeed when you're looking and seeking a needy sort of scarcity energy towards a woman when it comes to texting. And so the difference between validation seeking and frame holding is how you hold the frame within texting. Rather than this being some strategic play-by-play, it still comes back down to where you are as a man, how you hold yourself as a man, how you perceive the world around you, what your priorities are in your life, what your purpose and mission is. The beauty of being in purpose and in mission is that it spills into all aspects of your life. And when you're living in that space of hyper-focus and conviction of your own success, you don't get as lost in the silliness that is modern women and modern dating and all of that BS. My whole business at this point is around being in that to help you. I'm consumed with it because I'm distilling it and I'm using my knowledge of my 44 years on this planet and all of the experience that I've had to distill it down into something that is easy to understand for you men. And I know that every man that becomes in purpose, gets refocused, has commitment, has discipline in his life, and is ultimately self-loving in the most authentic way, you will not be concerned. You won't be lost in this idea of seeking validation. The only men that seek validation through dating are men that are not on point, that they're not focused in their own life. All you need to do when it comes to texting is be an extension of who you are as a man once you've established that as a masculine man. And so, again, why I always say don't even go near women until you've built that foundation. Because once you build the foundation, you're going to see things very differently. And you're going to not take women seriously. And that is a good thing. Because then when you get into sort of texting, you'll realize texting in of itself is almost childlike, particularly if a woman's trying to engage you in some sort of faux deep conversation through the text. You don't do that. First of all, men, we're not going to be dropping down into childhood trauma reveals and all this deep conversation one-on-one with a woman. That is beta. That is actually a wrong approach. And although she'll entertain it, if she likes you enough, she will subconsciously disrespect you ultimately from that dialogue, because she wants you to be untouchable. She wants you to be a Superman for her. And that doesn't mean being cold. It doesn't mean being a dick. It just means being not engaged in the drama and the gossip and the silliness that women are like. So you don't use text for any of that. You just use it for logistics in a fun way. You say less to create more. You say less for her to feel more. You just set up dates. You have a back and forth to get that going, and then you lock it in. You don't spend time texting with her between dates, especially at the beginning. And even later on down the line, you don't get into it. We're not texting our emotions and feelings to a girl. Even stuff like after a date, if you've hooked up with a girl, you don't text afterwards. You just leave it. You don't say, oh my God, that was the best night ever. That's a woman speaking. You just get back on the grind, back onto the mission. You leave, you don't spend too long, you have a great time, you're very present with her when you're in the date, but when it comes to the texting, you're not looking for anything within the text. You're just setting up dates and getting on the date. That's the primary concern. That leads me to my second point, which is how texting exposes your subconscious neediness. The more you say, the more you have an opportunity to reveal yourself. The fact that you are saying more is revealing yourself, if you see what I'm saying. So it's actually, for a woman, her prerogative is to see if she can lure you into some sort of dialogue that is in her feminine space, to see if you'll actually do it. And they think on the surface that that's what they want you to do. And then you do it, and then they get the ick. Then you do it, and then they start not finding you attractive. That's why they ghost guys after like the first date, because the guy gets too needy straight away. If you have a good date with a girl, first date, and then you immediately come back with like full-on neediness, that's going to blow your cover. And also it's revealing to you as a man where you're at. Never be needy with a woman. You never have to be needy. There's nothing a woman has that you need. Believe it. Outside of her sex, there's nothing a woman has that you don't have. And that's the thing that really makes a man feel great, when his woman is connected to him and she's intimate and you have fun with her and she's present with you and she's all about you, and you are delivering masculinity on a level where she is happy to give you that feminine in return. It's an exchange. And so be careful about that in terms of how you're texting. And honestly, I would look at that. If you are texting in a needy way, it might be a moment for you to actually reassess, pull back, and get back into realigning your masculinity before you go back out there again. Because any woman that actually goes along with that energy is masculine. And she will, through her own manipulation and seduction, force you into servitude to her. Being exposed is not necessarily all bad, because being exposed is the truth, and you need the truth in order to grow. And that woman that exposes you through texting and dating, she's not there to stay. She's there to expose you, lick your wounds, pick yourself up, and you'll go again. You'll learn from it, you'll grow, but you won't have to do it in front of her. So you don't need to be, embarrassed about that or anything like that. But yeah, it's a bitter pill, that one, in terms of when you expose yourself and expose your subconscious through the texting, because again, it's just coming through your hands, that neediness through to her. And, men double texting or being like, hey, I texted you the other day, I'm just wondering if you had any thoughts. You're already done at that point. And so why leadership is felt, not said, and how to create emotional momentum. So again, men get this wrong, where they assume a caricature of masculinity. This is something that their fathers did. Our fathers did this. And I think for a few generations, men have been cosplaying masculinity in a way that's tyrannical. That created a generation of boys that didn't have fathers, or that disrespected authority and disrespected the boys of Gen X and millennials and Gen Z are all sort of byproducts of lacking of fathers in the home. They're either being much more obviously feminine, submissive, or they are doing caricature of masculinity, which is overt, tyrannical. The extreme version of that is Nazi. Ultimately, that was caricature of masculinity as I see it. It was a total overreach, and I believe that's also why femininity became so empowered in the West, because it was sort of like a, we'll never let that happen again, and the way we'll never let that happen again is by putting women in charge of everything, which obviously was a mistake. So leadership is felt and not said. So the more aggressive you see someone doing all this, proclaiming masculinity, the more they're not being masculine at the end of the day. I certainly did this when I was younger. I didn't know what it was. So it looks, when you can see the performative nature of masculinity, you just follow that as a man, because you see all of that. And you go, oh, that's what a leader is, you know. And they do it in the Marines. They do that yelling and all that. And it has its place. But that doesn't work with women. It works with other men when you're trying to, you know, round up the men, or you're going to war, you're putting on your war paint, essentially, and you're running into battle with aggression. That works. But you take that energy and put it in your kitchen when you're trying to sort of talk to your girl or being on a date with her, and you're being overt like that, it won't work. And ultimately, she won't submit to that. Guys get confused with this as well, with like vulnerability and presence. And so leadership is presence. It's not vulnerability. Okay, vulnerability is just exposing yourself unnecessarily. And even when a woman will sort of try to lure you into that through her own vulnerability, oh, I'm telling you about all of my life, my history, my relationship with my father and my trauma. If she starts speaking on all of that as like a quid pro quo, and like, now it's your turn. What happened with you? You don't do that. You can't reveal it. You can, if anything that you say will be used against you, because it's going to make her feel afraid ultimately when you reveal your insecurities, even though that's what they want or they think they want. They only want that from their friends. Okay, and that's what they've been convinced, is that they think that the man should be their friend, and we're not their friends, we're their men. Leadership has to be embodied, and it has to be coming from an internal job of yourself, knowing masculinity. You get clear with what you believe in, you get clear with your rules, your regulations, your standards, your beliefs, your boundaries. You embody them, you live them yourself. You don't lead from the back, you lead from the front. And once you ground into that and you just evoke that and you embody it, you don't have to, there's nothing to prove. And women will feel that within you. And when they don't feel it, when you're sort of not doing it and you're a caricature of it, they'll push back on it. It always comes back to the man in the end. You will know exactly how you're doing by the reaction of the woman and the kind of woman that you're also attracting. It's kind of those two levels of feminine mirroring that you get based on how you are showing up in your life and then how you are leading. It's a beautiful thing that occurs, which is this universal reflection that happens to you as a man based on where you're at. And as long as you can take it on the chin as the L or the win, whatever it is for you, and learn from what you need to learn from and leave the rest. That is how you progress as a man. So just know that leadership is felt and it is not said. You cannot argue your way into leadership ultimately without being tyrannical. And tyranny only goes so far. And that's not what we're doing here ultimately. And ultimately tyranny gets overrun. So listen, I'm going to leave it there for today, lads. Appreciate you taking the time to listen. If you found it informative, then I'm sure you will definitely love the next episode, episode 4. When you start leading with clarity, you'll realize something deeper. The need to know who you really are. And that's what episode 4 is all about. It's all about becoming you. Appreciate all the support. Thanks for listening, and I'll definitely see you on the next one. Peace.